Hello everyone. I'd like to discuss my love-hate relationship with the Masters of the Universe Origins line. Let's start out with the things I love about them. I love that they are very nostalgic, much like the He-Man and Masters of the Universe characters that I had as a child. I think they're better than those figures actually for me because they're much more posable, more usable for playing with, or for creating videos, animating, that kind of thing. They're great for stop motion, sort of. One of the downfalls of them, some of them have a little bit weakness in the joints, and holding on to their equipment isn't always the best, easiest thing. So they could have some improvements as far as some of the joints and the holding the equipment. Otherwise, I really like the figures. I know there's some people complain about they have a little bit of a overhang of the knee to cover the knee joint that's sort of like a kneecap, and it looks kind of the worst on the gals. But I don't really have a problem with any of this. I'm not looking for characters to look exactly like cartoon characters or human real-life characters. I kind of enjoy toys to be toys and to use my imagination a bit and not have to have them necessarily exactly replicate something that I've seen visually before in a cartoon. Although I do admit as a kid that things not matching up to cartoons and movies was a bit more of a frustration for me. Now we'll get into some of the negatives, some of the things I don't like about the line or what's happening or what it seems to go on with Mattel. My story is that I got into collecting these or buying these really late in the after these were released. These were released in 2020, all of these. And I wasn't a toy collector. I've not been a toy collector. Didn't know anything about them. And so when I saw Skeletor and He-Man in the store on the pegs in 2021, and I didn't even buy them initially. I just thought, well, those look really cool, and they reminded me of my childhood. Again, so then I went and bought them a couple days later after I thought maybe I'll make a video out of them if I buy them, which I ended up doing, and you guys can go watch them if you're interested. So after that, once I started making videos with them, I got kind of interested. I need to have a couple more characters, so then I went and started ordering them. And I found that I could order these other Teela here, and Evelyn, Beastman, and Man-at-Arms. I could order from Amazon a little bit more than the $16, $17 that these guys cost on peg at retail. So some of these cost maybe more like $20, $25, I don't remember, for the other ones to order them because they were no longer available on peg, or maybe never have been, is the story. It looks like, from what I gathered now, is that these have never really been, these were all available in the US, I'm sorry, but never really made it to Europe or Australia, and then many of the other lines have not made it to the US. And so the frustration for me is that, we can't find the toys that we want. So now back up a little more. So now I go and search more about the story and watch other toy collectors and get more about the background. And there is a nuanced story to what goes on. It's not just about fans, it is about toy companies having to make a profit to some extent. We'll get into that. So yes, toy companies, they have to make a profit, especially publicly traded toy companies. When you're a publicly traded company, your number one goal and only goal is to raise the value of the shares, the stock price for your shareholders, right? So when you're a privately held company, you're usually run by someone who really cares about your product and really cares about your customers. They really love what they're doing and who they're doing it for. So like when George Lucas was in charge of Star Wars, he loved what he was doing and he cared about who he was giving it to. That was the product. Once a company goes public, they sell that out to a bunch of people who are basically they just run other companies, or CEOs. They're on board members of other companies. All they do is run companies, and at that point, it's no longer about serving the customer or serving what the business originally intended, right? If they were all about serving people, or if they were about being a good airline, or whatever it was that they started, is no longer their driving force. Their driving force is now to raise the stock value for shareholders. And I believe that the toy companies are no different. They're probably all publicly traded, especially the big ones, Kenner and Mattel. So their only drive is to raise stockholder price, or the value of the stock price. Now, seems like everyone's saying that toys are made for kids and that's all they're made for, and that, not all they're made for, but that's who buys them. And if these toys lines can't succeed with kids, then they can't succeed at all for the companies, the brands. So that because 80% of the people they're saying are mothers and fathers and grandparents buying these for kids, And if they're not buying them, then there's just not enough return on the investment for the company in order to make them. The tooling costs to make these are too expensive, and then the painting and all that, the line. I would wonder about the tooling costs, because if you look at Masters of the Universe, there aren't a lot of different tooling in a way. They use many of the same parts over and over and over between different characters. So that argument, I'm sure they're still expensive pieces, but it does bring down the cost significantly. So then the other costs are just setting up and running, getting the line up to go to make one figure, and then setting it up to make another figure with different colored plastics. There's definitely costs with that, and then getting the card backs and all that, so that you're making the same thing over and over again. So yes, I see that okay, back to well, the issue is that they're not available. You can't find them on the peg. So when you become interested and become a collector, so now that once I've gotten interested in the line, now I can't get the ones I want, and that becomes frustrating. Have been able certain characters, especially something like Trapjaw, sort of very important in the cartoon, one of the main characters, and very popular and very difficult to get. So this means Mattel either didn't make enough of them, didn't understand the demand that was going to be for them, or they have done a very shoddy job at making sure they were distributed evenly to the different companies and countries. And maybe that's not Mattel's fault. Maybe they're just selling to their customers, who are Amazon, or not Amazon really, it's Walmart and Target are their primary customers of these. And then the secondary customers, and then there's also Big Bad Toy Store and Entertainment Earth. So again, this is also frustrating for a customer. If I want to collect them, I have to go to all these different places. I can't just go buy them at one store, one at a time as I see them and get excited. There's a joy and a treasure hunt of going to the store and finding them on peg that I don't quite get out of ordering them. There is a joy in ordering them too, but it's not the same as finding it on a trip to the store. And what else do I want to say about that? Because I think they're really missing out, by not having them on the stores. I guess I lost my train of thought there, so we'll come back to it. So, again, maybe it's not Mattel to blame. Maybe it is Walmart and Target, and these stores that they've been burned in the past. Let's say sometime maybe they ordered too many of a figure. Maybe one of the Star Wars movies came out and they ordered so much of something, and then they had all this overstock they couldn't sell, and they had to reduce the price. And they learned that, hey, we don't want to have too much of something. We'd rather sell everything we have than buy too much of something and then have a loss. So that would mean they are following their sort of general corporate model of always just on time delivery. So they don't want to have anything in that they're not going to sell immediately, and that's why it seems they only order, say, like the Rise of Evil pack at Target. They only order 2 at a time, and then when they sell, they'll order 2 more, and then when they sell, they'll order 2 more. They don't want to have 5 or 6 on the shelf, because then they won't sell. If you go to my Target, for instance, you'll see 4 Panthers on the shelf that have been there for as long as I've been going to that Target now, so probably 6 weeks, 7 weeks. Those Panthers are still sitting there. They're not selling, and they don't want to get caught in that. So they don't order large orders. They order these little tiny orders. They don't want to get caught with it. And then Mattel, of course, they don't want to get caught with extra inventory, so they don't necessarily make a whole lot of these. They just make enough that they expect Walmart and Target to order, and then the other, I guess, whoever's ordering them over in Europe and Australia. So, boy, oh boy, where am I going with all this? Yeah, so there's really no one specifically to blame. It's kind of the publicly traded company has to make money for stockholders, and they can't just have stuff sitting on a shelf that's not selling. Then they lose money, and the same goes for Walmart and Target. And I wish Mattel would make it, so that they would make sure that like all the figures got to all the continents, and not just, Target ordered all their order against Wave 1, and they weren't going to order anymore, and then over in Europe, they ordered all Wave 2 through 5, and they weren't going to get any Wave 1. I do think if Mattel is not doing something to manage that, they really need to, because maybe Walmart and Target, the people who are ordering the stuff, are kind of just corporate goons, let's say, for lack of a better word, and don't really necessarily focus on the toy market, or especially the adult collectors who are interested. Okay, so another issue I have with all this stuff is that toy companies, it seems, are taking away the imagination for us. I think that there's something going on with our culture where perhaps in the loss of religion, the move away from organized religion, people are looking for something like religion to fulfill that need, that biological need or whatever that is, to have this sort of story that we like to tell. Humans have always been telling stories, as we know from the Iliad and the Odyssey and things like that. So I think it seems to me that fans these days, they want the story to be completely filled in by someone else. Almost like a student in a classroom wants a teacher to tell them, give them the full answer, tell me how it's supposed to be, explain to me the backstory of every character. I want to know their backstory, and then I want you to tell me the forward story of every character. This is what happened with Star Wars, which I think is kind of ruined it for a lot of fans. Is that the official narrative kind of throws away everyone else's ideas about it. Everyone else's extended universe now gets kind of trampled on as like, oh, that's just nonsense. There's only one official narrative, and that's the official Bible. This is the canon. This is what we've allowed in the Bible. This is the stuff we've thrown out of the Bible. If you guys don't know the history of the Bible, you'll know what I mean. The Bible was also once, early Christians had many books that they were interested in. And then around, I think, 400 BC, and I forget where the place, I want to say the Concordant Worms, but I probably have this wrong. Someplace, some biblical scholars, let's say, got together and decided which book should be included in the official, Christian text Bible, and which books should be excluded from that. And so that's kind of what I'm saying is happening to Star Wars and Masters. And I don't think I like it. I think I like leaving the stories a little less filled in and leaving more up to the audience's imagination to create on their own without having to have everything, basically spoon-fed to them. This is, back when we watched Filmation as a kid, Skeletor was never really explained where he came from or how he got made. And then later on with MOTU Classics and after I guess they called it the 2000X, they started explaining all the backstories and how Skeletor got created and all this stuff. I don't think it's that creative, honestly. The original creators who created all of these toys and Star Wars and stuff, they didn't have these kind of like chess-like ideas about how things were going to go. They created by the seat of their pants, with the limitations of the day and the limitations that they had and that's what creativity and genius was born out of, their limitations, essentially. Battle Cat is a great example. They didn't come up with, He-Man needs a Battle Cat to ride. No, what they had was another toy that they wanted to sell. They wanted it to use it because they already had the mold. You guys know the story. It was probably, I guess, from the Big Jim line. And the guys who were actually tasked to make the toy and convert it into He-Man thought it was a ridiculous joke, right? But it actually turned out that in that case, the executives were right, and that they could just slap some battle armor on it, change the color of his stripes, make him and make He-Man ride him like a horse, and suddenly he's a piece of our imagination that and we all love Battle Cat. Well, maybe we don't love Battle Cat. I don't really care for him that much, honestly. But you see how characters were made originally they just kind of bloom out of circumstances organically, with limitations. He-Man himself, right, came from the kind of barbarian idea, and you saw the kind of original development models of him. It just comes about more organically and more roughshod, slipshod, whatever you want to say. It's accidental, okay, and. That's how the original Star Wars was too. If you hear the stories of how Star Wars was made, it was basically saved on the editing floor because the film was kind of bad as originally put together. But it's these things that happen as something's being created that make it so wonderful when it's done. And I think that's lacking later on when a corporation takes over control or fans take over control later. So like Star Wars fans go and make Star Wars. It's different than when the creators wrote it. Creators wrote it. There was more irreverence. There was nothing sacred. There were no sacred cows. They didn't have any of that stuff. And I think that's where like Rian Johnson had the right idea in some sense of like there's no sacred cows in Star Wars. When they created Star Wars, there were no sacred cows. But now there are, and you have to maintain that character. And I do get why fans were angry with him for the way that he necessarily treated Luke Skywalker and other parts of his film. That to many fans just didn't seem to fit. I could go on a tangent with that. I think you could go either way with that. Luke was a bit of a whiny guy in the beginning in the first early movies, and maybe he still had that whininess in him after something went wrong. Although, yeah, I also agree with the fans that, maybe Luke had outgrown that by Return of the Jedi and wasn't likely to go back to being that whiny kid. So, hey, and I'm also guilty. Let me say here, I am guilty of being a fanboy in some extent, to some degree. When The Force Awakens came out, I loved it. I thought it was great. Basically, all it took was a Star Wars label on it and action and things that looked like Star Wars, and I was ready to swallow the story, hook, line, and sinker. Even though, as upon further reflection, there really isn't much to the story. It is pretty empty and weak and full of Mary Sue characters and such that don't really have a backstory. But again, hey, do we have to always have a backstory? Maybe in that case you do, because it's already there. And you need, as other people have said, you need to explain, yes, how you get from Empire being destroyed to New Empire. You don't have to explain it in the first place. When you have an Empire, you don't have to explain it. But when the Empire dies and then it comes back, you do have to explain it. And that is true. At least I agree with that point of view. So, I have lots more to think about this. Okay, what is going on with that? Again, I think the fans have gotten to, they want rigid ideas, they want stories spoon-fed to them, instead of leaving things open-ended a little bit. I would like to have more, hey, Filmation was He-Man, and after that, everything else is extended universe, it's fine, MOTU, whatever else they had. But I think I prefer that fans allow everyone to create and use the characters however they want. If you watch my videos, He-Man and Skeletor are friends now, and I think that that should be fine. Although there's probably plenty of fans who would say that doesn't work. No, 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 no. I don't want to get too far into that. It's just that yes, let's let them all. Let's be creative and let these characters inhabit our own imaginations instead of having to have our imagination spoon-fed to us. I could rail against schools because I believe it's public schooling that actually does this to us and teaches us, basically kills our imagination, kills our interest and natural interest in things, and says you need to listen to a teacher and they'll guide you about what you're supposed to think, what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to do it. You're a domesticated animal by the time you get out of 12 years of school, plus if you go to college. You basically become, yes, an oxen with a hook through your nose being led around, unless you're very strong in character or somehow you may be lucky to come out of it later. Anyway, so yes, that's my love-hate relationship with these characters. I wish they were more available. I think a solution would be if somebody could buy the rights to Masters of the Universe. Would be my ideal thing would be to take it away from Mattel or Super Sevens or whoever else. Maybe Super Sevens is a good company to do this. I don't know enough about this stuff, but I would like to see a company perhaps make them in the United States, ongoing, the same ones. Basically, in perpetuity, like Light Brights or Etch-a-Sketches, things like that, that can be passed down from generation to generation, and like a Barbie has gone on for 60 years. If they're always available, and they're basically always the same, so that no matter if you buy them 10 years from now, you can still make them work with these characters, and the play sets if they make them, maybe with slight changes as we go on. Maybe you can make lines with slightly improved plastic or shinier plastic, duller plastic. I would love to see characters with strong magnets embedded in their feet so that I could make them, if on a metal surface, I could make them pose on one leg if they were strong enough joints and strong enough magnets. So there are things I think you could still do to make very small, subtle improvements and continue to have new, because you always want to market something new, I guess, is the idea. To people, but I don't think that's necessary. I think if you make something really good and quality, you just keep making the same thing, like a Rubik's Cube, coming from guitars. It's like a 1959 Gibson. Or Les Paul, you get a design that works well. You don't mess with it. You don't change it. Just keep making the same thing over and over again, and it'll be a classic. And people keep buying them 50, 60, 70 years later, and for good reason. It's a good design. It's a good model. So. These are good designs, they're good characters, they have good stories. The Filmation did a fantastic job of creating a He-Man universe that is good for children and adults, in my opinion. They're just great. Skeletor is funny. He's tongue-in-cheek sometimes. They always have good lessons in them that I think are genuine, real, honest lessons about life. There's some real wisdom in He-Man. there's a lot to this to that show to be appreciated. So I would like to just see a company just make these characters and only these characters, and just make them always available for people, whether that's through order or retail. But essentially just keep the line always available so that people don't run into this frustration of once they start and they buy these two and then they want another character, that they should be available. At least a certain, maybe, 15 or 20 of the primary characters. I could do without a lot of the later characters. I lost interest after the first 2 or 3 lines early on as a kid, even because I thought they did get kind of goofy and just too far-fetched, right? But other people may love them, and that's okay. I'm not here to really put down anyone's opinions of anything. If you like the originals better than these, that's fine. If you like the MOTU classics better, I get it. They're beautiful. They're really well detailed. I love those figures. I just didn't know anything about them when they were out, and probably wouldn't have bought them anyways. I wasn't chasing toys. I have more of an appreciation for toy collecting now. And I understand why, as a collector, you want to have if a certain character like Trapjaw I want to get, if you can't get him, it can be really frustrating. And it can really kind of, I don't know, I feel like the Princess and the Pea sometimes. It's just a tiny, tiny nuisance, that pea under 20 mattresses, and yet I can't sleep, I bet a lot of you collectors can empathize with that. It's just the smallest thing, one missing character in your line, and it tweaks you, it bugs you like it's just a thorn in your side that you just can't get out. So we should all be better than that. We should all kind of relax. At least I should, because I know better. But I'd like to see these kind of handled in a different way by people that have a real love for them as they are, want them to continue in perpetuity, not necessarily in this whole, we've got to make a big profit this year. And here's the other part is that they may be doing this on purpose, and probably are to some extent, making them hard to come by. There may be by design a supply shortage, because that supply and demand, it creates more demand. It's much like Beanie Babies did. If you guys know anything about that, when they were making limited supply Beanie Babies, and certain ones would only be 10,000 available, and that would jack the price up of these Beanie Babies up thousands of dollars, because people were going nuts at the time and thought they'd be great collector's items. And so maybe Mattel or Target and Walmart are thinking like that by making them somewhat hard to come by, that they can make us fans kind of frenzy for them, and like we feel like we've got a great victory when we get one. Maybe they do that on purpose, and that guarantees that they know they will sell everything they make, so they won't have any extra sitting on the shelves, and as other people say, that makes them, whoever's in charge of that decision, look really great to their body. I don't know where my camera cut out there, but it just stopped recording on me. So I think I was talking about maybe Mattel and Walmart and Amazon have been doing this on purpose, creating a shortage of supply to increase the demand and make collectors go crazy for them. That I wouldn't put it past them. Again, that makes whoever's making that decision look good to their bosses when there's no extra stock thrown away. So that could be it, that there's just executives that are afraid of having any stock to throw away, and so they make sure that there's a limit and make sure that everything gets sold that way. And they kind of like the frenzy of it, because that means more talk on the internet, and that's always good for them, the marketing people. Look how much buzz there is about our product, and they care more about the buzz than the actual sales. So that could be going on too, that they may be just doing this on purpose to sucker us. There's a known phenomenon in addiction and behavior, that you will become addicted to something if the rewards are intermittent and unpredictable. What I mean by this is, if every time you do a certain behavior I give you a cookie, that will maybe reward that behavior to a certain extent. But if every time you do that behavior, some of the times I give you a cookie and some of the times I don't, and you don't know when or why, that will make you want to jump through hoops for me like crazy. And I don't know what that is. I probably could talk about it, and we'll go into that another time if you're interested, why that is. But I think that that is a known mechanism. If you want to make someone addicted to you, I shouldn't tell you this, but yes, that's how you go about it. So maybe they're doing it something like that to us by making them sort of intermittently. You find one and you don't find one. You find one, you don't find one. You become very addicted to that. It's just a part of our brain and the dopamine circuit that it will drive you crazy, and you will go back looking for it over and over, because sometimes you get the hit and sometimes you don't, and it drives you nuts. It's probably why gamblers get addicted to gambling. So I know I've given you a lot of thoughts. I'd like to share all these thoughts because there's a lot connected about all this kind of stuff, and it's interesting to me. I hope it's equally interesting to you, and that hopefully you enjoy these characters and these figures, and hopefully you can get the ones that you want, and hopefully Mattel continues to make them, at least until we all get what we want, right? At least most of us who want them. But then, of course, there'll always be another group like me who gets into them late, and it'll be too late. So there'll never be everybody who get what they want. And that's just the way it is. The Rolling Stones taught us that, right? Okay. Yeah, that's enough for now. Thank you all for watching and listening to my thoughts. And enjoy your toy collecting and figures. And take care.